What's going on? Jake here with Uncommon EDC, and today we're going to be checking out the Rosecraft Blades Ocoee River Kayak. And not only do I have the blue resin and burlwood version here to check out, but I also have the red resin and burlwood version to take a look at. And I think both cover options are absolutely stunning. I myself am a little bit more partial to the blue version, but you really can't go wrong either way. These knives are $59.99, and I'll leave a link in the description where you can find more information on these knives as always. But before we get too deep into the video, these knives actually aren't mine to keep. These were sent to me by Rosecraft as part of their new Rosecraft pass around group. And so that does mean that when I'm done with them, I'll be forwarding them off to the next channel. But super appreciative of them for accepting me into the group. I'm no stranger to Rosecraft traditionals, but this new pass around group is going to allow me to check out and share significantly more than I have in the past. So definitely something to look forward to. Huge shout out to Rosecraft for sending these over. Now, if you're not familiar with the Ocoee River Kayak, this is the latest iteration of it. So it's a re-release with new cover options. I actually have the smooth red bone version, although I've never made a video on it. So this is the first Ocoee River Kayak video. But the Ocoee River Kayak is an Andy Armstrong design. And like many of his designs, he drew inspiration from historical patterns. And so the kayak was inspired by the canoe. And you can see the connection there, canoe, kayak, very similar types of boats, but obviously we also have very similar patterns here. And so although it's inspired by that, a lot of changes went into this design. So first and foremost is the swell center, which I think is a really welcome addition, really improves the ergos of the handle of the knife. The second, though, is that it's only one blade. So a traditional canoe will have blades coming out of both ends. And I actually think that does more for the ergos than even the change in the handle, because although the handle is super comfortable, with a traditional canoe, you really wouldn't notice because that second blade is typically going to be closed when you're using it, or at least it should be. And it's going to protrude over the shape of the handle, so you'll have that hard, flat edge that really ruins the ergos of the interior portion of that handle. You really can't tell that it has any sort of significant shape to it because you just feel the flat of the closed blade. And so really love that this is a single blade version. One of the reasons that I really enjoy single bladed slip joints. Now that also means that we only get a single bolster versus the two that we typically see on a canoe. And he utilized that extra space to add a lanyard hole, a modern feature that you don't typically see on slip joints, but very welcome here in my opinion. So this is a smaller knife. It's only about 5.9 inches overall. And so our handle in the closed position, we're looking at 3.625 inches. I am able to get all four fingers on there, but it's not a super comfortable grip like this. I prefer to slide back a little bit, spread out, and go with a 3-finger grip, leaving my pinky completely hanging off the end. And so it ends up being what's essentially a 3-finger grip. And so although it's a 3-finger grip, it's got these really nice shapes to the handle where your fingers can land really nicely. It's also really secure. I don't feel like I'm missing anything by having nothing to grip with my pinky. But because you have that lanyard hole, if you're looking for that extra grip, you can just add a lanyard to the end and grab your pinky onto that. That also makes great for just pulling it out of your pocket or decoration to match the covers if you want. You can add a bead with some burlwood or something like that. So gives you a lot more versatility in terms of the handle. Now this weighs in at 2.9 ounces. We'll take a closer look at the blade as well, which is actually only 2.33 inches. So not an ultra long blade. And I think the blade is kind of the thing that gives this knife a cult following, but it's also a little bit of a turnoff for some people. And so we get D2 on the steel, beautiful flat grind. Then you can notice that the blade isn't in line with the spine. It kind of tilts downwards, points inwards a little bit. And so I think that can be a little bit off-putting for people that just really aren't into the look of it. But I absolutely love that aspect about it, especially when you pair it with this K-clip shaped blade. It makes for a really excellent utility knife. For a slip joint, you got this really excellent utility cutter with the blade pointed down slightly, so you have that downward facing tip, and it's not going to puncture too deeply. And you can see we get a nice tip on there, but still plenty of edge there to use. And so I think it actually leads to really great utility cuts. You don't have to worry about it closing on you if you're not super familiar with slip joints. If you've never carried one, it has a very strong spring, so you can obviously close it with enough pressure, but the amount of pressure you're going to have from just placing your thumb on the back of that blade isn't going to do it. And obviously you can kind of just learn learn to not put pressure on the back of the blade and then not worry about that at all. But you're not gonna have to worry about it closing on you from light pressure from your thumb. Also, with any slip joint, when you're making those cuts, whatever material you're cutting is pressing up on the edge of the blade, which means it's putting pressure towards the spine, which is gonna keep it open. And so while you're cutting, very, very unlikely that it's gonna close on you. The only real chance of that is if you whack it on the spine for whatever reason into something, then it might close on you. But it does have a really nice half stop. I'm not worried about my fingers at all there. And so really nice walk and talk on this one as well. D2 on the steel, don't remember if I mentioned that. We have Rosecraft stamped on the tang, and yes, it is stamped on the show side here. On our PAL side, we have our etch with our model designation D2 steel and Andy Armstrong's maker's mark. And so just a really clean design. You don't get a lot of billboarding or anything on Rosecrafts, or really any traditionals. You don't get a lot of billboarding, but we do have a really nice shield here with the kind of traditional Rosebud shield that Rosecraft uses on a lot of their models. It's not the only shield they use, but it's the one that we see most often, and it's also the one that was on the original version of this knife. So really great to see. I think it's a nice looking shield. I have brass pins there. And the fit and finish on these is always going to be spectacular. They do a really good job of QC. And so they have second sales. That's where you can expect to see fit and finish issues. Rarely ever going to see anything on a first if you're purchasing it as a first. And so you can see centering is right down the center, and this is the case for both of them, so I'm not going to go over fit and finish for both. Love how the covers are executed. You can see there's half burl wood, half resin, and the seam or transition has this little wavy pattern that aesthetically looks great and is also ultra smooth. You would expect that two different materials you'd notice that transition, but you really don't. It feels identical. You don't really notice when you pass over. Don't really notice anything actually until you hit that shield. You can feel that it's a different material, but super smooth, everything completely flush, no gapping in the springs or on those covers, and both front and back side are identical in terms of the fit and finish on both of these. And so really well executed, again, right down the center, and the walk and talk is excellent. So I'm going to stop talking for a moment here. We'll talk about it after, but just kind of open and close it a couple times so we can hear what that sounds like. So you can see super snappy action. I'd say the pull on both of these is pretty much identical, maybe 6 to 6.5. I'd say the red is slightly heavier, maybe the 6.5, and the blue is a 6, but nearly identical. And one thing I really enjoy about it too is that they're also very kind of even. Sometimes with slip joints, when they have that half stop, the first half pull will be a little bit heavier than the second half pull, or vice versa. The action feels identical in both the first and second half and is super snappy into all three positions. So again, just really well executed. They do such a great job on their slip joints. This is model RCT009 if you want to look it up, but of course I will make sure to link to it down in the description of the video. Let me know what you think of these down in the comments below. Definitely be on the lookout for them on other channels in the future, and more Rosecrafts in the coming weeks from other channels that are sending them over to me. So definitely looking forward to that. But again, would love to hear your thoughts on these down in the comments. They are in stock at Rosecraft right now, and I think it's going to be relatively popular, so I would try and grab them while they're available, because I think these are even better than the red smooth bone, which I wasn't really expecting. I love the red smooth bone, and so I think these ones are even better. So definitely jump on that if this is something you're interested in. But thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider liking, commenting, subscribing, checking out some of my other videos. It all helps the channel out a ton. And as always, I hope you have a great one. Take care.